Most of the time you hear people seeking funding, they're seeking a paycheck. Funding's not your paycheck, okay? Your pay as a founder is you're gonna own a big company.
Welcome everyone to UpTech Report. This is our Founders Journey and Leaders Insights. We're here joined with William Hurley, also goes by Whirly, based in Austin, Texas. We were in our first part of our interview hearing about Strangeworks as well as this quantum computing platform that you're building. Fascinating, bringing the future to now. But I'm curious, like, what got you, going back a little bit, excited in quantum computing in the first place? Tell me more about your story.
Well, so as an entrepreneur, I always like to know what my next companies will be. And so I found it very early on, around 2010, we had started a mobile platform and it was tremendously successful. And I said, well, now that I have a little extra cash and stuff, I should start thinking about where I might want to be making my bets later and either investing in the areas or buying domains or IP or, kind of structuring. And so I had a choice when I was exiting my last company. I could do biohacking, I could do, quantum. There were a couple of other areas, and quantum seemed like the one that was the closest to the market timing that would be conducive for a good entrepreneurial journey, but also the one that had the longest time frame. In other words, it's a company I could start and work at, till I die, right? And that was one of the things is, our first company ran for about 6 years. We spun a company out of it. The main company was acquired by Accenture in 2015. The spin out was acquired in 2016, or I may have just said those exactly opposite. And so then in March of 2015, we started our third company, my second as a founder, Honest Dollar. And that was acquired by Goldman Sachs on our 1-year anniversary. And so having been through that, most recent experience being such a short run to such great success.
Very short, 1 year.
Right. Then we were taking the approach of like, we want something where we have a chance to really build something. Like that was great. As entrepreneurs, it was like amazing, like slam dunk. We're the guys. That's awesome. But as founders, it wasn't, because there was no real founder journey. It was like, well, we started a company and then we sold it. So we didn't get to
let down, like, oh, now what?
Right. But we didn't get to go through some of the stuff that you talk about, that you think about, et cetera, right? So
interesting. So that's not a typical a success story we'll talk about, to suddenly grow and success and sold and now to have a mindset of something to go much longer. But from the inside of the first two ventures and now this one, when it comes to, you have a great idea, but then you need the funding to make it happen. What have you seen as the biggest mistakes that one can make when seeking funding?
Well, that's a great question, but I'll say you may not need the funding, right? You live in the greatest time to be an entrepreneur in the history of the world. When I was young, I used to have to cut UPC codes out of cereal boxes and save them up over the course of months and months, only to take them to a thing called a post office, a physical email, at which point 12 weeks later, the first of 30 components I needed would show up in the mailbox, hopefully not crushed by the postal service. And today, you're 18 and you got an idea and you get out of high school and you know a job, you can get AWS can fire up literally an enterprise class infrastructure for you that you can turn off and on for pennies. You can have them deliver stuff in 2 hours to your house. You can, it's like, man, you kids live in an amazing place. And so that's the first mistake. Most of the time you hear people seeking funding, they're seeking a paycheck. Funding's not your paycheck, okay? Your pay as a founder is you're going to own a big company. And that sucks and people don't like it, but there's a rule. My investment partner at Ecliptic Capital, Mike Irwin, came up with years ago that I've always thought was a great advice, which is make it up. You use it up, wear it out, make do or do without. And when he came up with that, I was like, that's the entrepreneur's credo, right? That is what it's like. Like, there's no entrepreneurial story that's like, had a great idea, people give me millions of dollars, we went public, and it's like, that's not how any of this works, right? The second mistake, which is probably the one for people to pay most attention to, so don't be trying to get your paycheck. No investor wants to hear, I'm going to give you $1 million, $800,000 of it goes to pay you guys, and $200,000 goes into building the thing that gives me my money back, right? That's not a good pitch. But the second thing, and probably the most important thing, is that people don't right size their rounds. They don't do cap table management right. They don't know that there's a physics to the business. a classic mistake. They do a bunch of friends and family rounds that are people that most likely get crushed out later. There's all these, but when you talk about getting funding, right? So they don't manage the funding process. They don't manage what the effects on the cap table. They don't do enough modeling. But the third thing, which is like the absolute most important, is know who the fuck you're talking to, right? Like you're going to go to a person that writes $50 million checks and ask them for $500,000. They are not writing that check. You're not even going to move the needle, right? They're not. There's no reason for them to even talk to you. Likewise, you can't go to somebody who does average $500,000 allocation and be like, I need you to write a $25 million, $50 million check. That doesn't make sense. So I think when people get, entrepreneurs often give VCs a bad rap. Not that a lot of them don't deserve it, but entrepreneurs are often like, well, I went to all these people, they all said no. Well, sure, you went to 20 people and they all said no. 20 asked, 20 no's. But if 10 of them don't write checks below $5 million and your round's $1 million, why did you spend time talking to them anyway, right? And if 5 of the 10 that are left, okay, if they spent, time where they don't do deep tech or they have a time horizon that's short on the fund, and you're not in that, so they don't match. So already out of 20 people, 15 of them never could have written you the check, even if they loved you and wanted to, just based on the physics of their fund and the way that they do business, right? And so now you have the last 5 and you say, oh, well, 3 of those were people who I knew already made an investment in something adjacent to me that they might think is competitive. So now they're defending their portfolio. They're not going to invest in you. They're just going to want to learn what they can from you, maybe share it, okay? So out of 20 people, only 2 of them ever really could have given you funding. And you just wasted your time with those other 18 people. And it's not to say, you shouldn't take every meeting or talk to everybody. In life, you should. In entrepreneurship, you shouldn't. You can't take every meeting. There's a million VCs for you to talk to. There's a million entrepreneurs that I'm talking to. We need better ways of mixing and matching, what I'm looking for and what you're looking for and saying, okay, because the secret is, and this is for entrepreneurship in general, alignment. When the needs of the business and the needs of the employees align, magic happens. When the needs of the business founders and the needs of the investors align, magic happens, right? It's all about finding alignment. And you don't have, people say it's a numbers game. You don't have to go get 100 no's to get 1 yes. Don't talk to 99 people who never could have said yes in the first place. Like spend some time researching for a couple weeks, maybe even a month or 2 before you roll out looking for funding and understand who's in your area and who's not, who's competitive with people who invested in competitors and might need an investment in that place for their board, like get some data, not the drama that we do where you're just like, well, I talked to them all and they said no. So fuck VCs. It's like, you can't say that, okay? Like that may not be fair to either one of you in that situation.
You already gave a footnote for your upcoming book, Data Not Drama. Right. Can I assume that you're taking lessons learned and putting it into a book? Is that what?
I'm taking the systems and method I've run for making objective decisions and putting everything I know into a book in the hopes that it'll create 5-10 million more entrepreneurs much better than I am, right? Like my retirement job is going to be spreading entrepreneurship. So I'm working with the Legatum School at the MIT Sloan School, which I accepted the innovator in residence position there. I'm working with a couple international groups, obviously with universities and schools and stuff locally. And I have some kids' books coming out on entrepreneurship too, which is why Data Not Drama keeps getting delayed. I'm like, these kid books are not hard. This book on quantum computing, I got a rum and coke and I told my wife, hey, leave me alone for 2-3 hours and knock out this kid's book. And like 9 months later, we were still working on that book. And it was like entanglements longer and we only like 3 or 4 words per page. And so it turns out they're harder than writing an actual book. But I didn't know that at the time. So I signed myself up for several of them. So I got to get those out first.
Oh my gosh. Well, when you get the entrepreneurship one or business, growing a business one for babies, I'd love that.
I will make sure to get you a copy. There'll be 4 books in that series. I think I'll make sure you get one of each.
Oh my gosh. So if you had to pick, I imagine this will be going into the Data Not Drama, but one lesson learned from Honest Dollar, of a takeaway, just pick one. What would that be?
Check it out. So let me tell you this story. So here's
okay.
So I'm at Honest Dollar, and the lesson is this: unintended consequences. Everything we do, everything we create, every piece of code we write has some unintended consequence in the future that we can't foresee. Tell you about one of mine at Honest Dollar. So the IEEE called me. Great organization. I've been a member for 14 years, I think, or 15 years. So I don't know, for a long time. And they said, look, we're going to be doing this charity auction. We got this amazing guy, Tim Decker. He's a speed painter. And he's going to come and he's going to paint a picture of, what was it? It was Einstein, Steve Jobs, and the Statue of Liberty. And we're going to auction them. And we thought you could use your network to help us auction these off. And I said, oh, 100% I could. And I said, so I'm going to bid $500 on each painting, and then I'll tweet it out, and then, that'll get your, double the starting price or whatever. So I did on my credit card, no problem. So I don't think about it for weeks and weeks and weeks, okay? Because I know we're short on time, so I'll wrap this story up. So weeks later, Goldman Sachs calls me and says, there's a package for me, giant crate. Nobody knows what it is. I'm not expecting anything. You don't know anything. And the lesson is this. Even in that action, there was an unintended consequence, which was Einstein sold 5 seconds. Statue of Liberty, gone. And then the total number of bids for the painting of Steve Jobs was one $500 bid from me, which made me the proud owner of this absolutely incredibly evil-looking Steve Jobs painting. It looks like Ghostbusters. You know that painting? It looks like at night if he's looking at me, like his eyes are going to glow up or something, and they're like possessed by Steve Jobs. Let me tell you, what do you think my wife said when I said, "Hey, so this came to the office today"? She said, "Take it back."
Take it back.
What do you think when I said, "Hey guys, we have this giant building. Maybe we could hang this?" And they're like, "No." So it sits in my closet where I do my private calls as a constant reminder of the law of unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences. Now that is quite a problem. Those who are listening to the audio podcast, that was a giant painting of Steve Jobs.
Maybe we'll take a picture and send it to you to put up somewhere.
Yes, we'll have to put it on.
It's a ridiculously large painting.
Oh my gosh!
Well, very evil-looking Steve Jobs too, by the way. Like he's
just so intense.
Yeah, very so
intense. Oh man. Well, it's a law of unintended consequences. Something to definitely consider as anyone moves forward in their business and growth. One last question I have for you: what kind of tech innovations do you predict we'll see? I know this is kind of a leading question, especially based off what you're doing in the near term and long term, and just like what would you want people to be thinking about?
Well, I think there's a lot of things near term that are closer than we think. Autonomous driving, more customized drugs and healthcare stuff. Those are all very interesting. Long term, I have no idea. I mean, the way I like to position it is this. Quantum computing, both near and long term, is going to be a major impact. Quantum technology. So not just computing, but quantum sensors, maybe a quantum internet, things like that. Those are the really big world-changing things, and why I've chosen that path, right? But the way I would maybe think of it is this way. Think of 1956 or 8 or whenever Grace Hopper invented what would be known as cobalt. And then a few years later, in like 63, this guy Jack's like, hey, check it out, microchip. When that came into being, nobody thought about the internet. Nobody thought about the iPhone. Nobody thought about autonomous cars, going to Mars, or any of this stuff, right? And so when you think about that, all right, then you think, okay, now we have this new form of quantum computing. So when people wonder, why am I investing time in all the community and helping everybody? And I'm not like, here's where my capitalistic entrepreneurial nature will score. It's because I'm not interested in the opportunities of the problems of today. I'm interested in the thousands, the trillions of dollars of opportunities in things like quantum computing, these new technologies that are a platform on which a whole new set of internets and iPhones and communications and things will be built, where it's an opportunity-rich environment where there's room for success for thousands of entrepreneurs, not just me. And so it's like, that's really the focus. And when I look at it, it's, again, it's not a prediction. It's a prediction of almost nothing, which is to say there's not a specific thing, but there's a whole new set of problems and solutions and drugs and materials and financials and all of this that are going to come out of this. And who knows what any of those will be used for, and who knows what they'll lead to. And that, to me, is the most exciting thing. And I predict we'll start seeing those in the next 36 months in the area of quantum computing.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing your insight and a little bit of the story that you've been on, and the law of unintended consequences. Definitely for those who want to learn more about Strangeworks, go to strangeworks.com or go to quantum computing and be able to already get involved in this movement of this future that is happening now. Thank you so much for your time, William. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, this was our Founders Journey, part of our UpTech episode. Our sponsor for today is TerraLeap. If you want to learn how to better leverage the power of video to increase your sales and marketing results, head over to terraleap.io and learn about the new product, Customer Stories. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.